Hello, everybody. Hey, hey. I see I have the live icon here, but I still have the circle telling me, the little wheel that tells me that I'm about to go live. So let's give it a second. And now it seems like I'm actually live. Yay. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me close these extra windows and I can see. If you are here, listening to this live. Hello, hello, happy 2021st or hopeful 2021st, like I like to greet, because it's the first time that I'm seeing you live in this year. And for those of you who are seeing me for the first time, I'm Rocio. I'm one of the group moderators in this group, and I work with Kathy and our team of wonderful coaches. Again, if you're listening live, please say hi, write something in the comments because, just to make sure that you can actually hear me. In the past, I've had that happening. So I'm jaded. So say hi and make sure that you can hear me. If you're watching the replay, you can just say team hashtag team replay and say where you're coming from or where you're listening from, and that will be lovely. So we know one, where you come from, and two, if you actually listen to this episode of Level Up Live. These are very short episodes that we go where we go live every Tuesday and basically just have a 15-minute or less chat about things that are in our minds and our coaches' lives and things that we are seeing from the membership in our various programs and groups. And so this time I'm actually coming to you to do that very thing. Not just from our groups, we have a big group online on Facebook. It's a free Facebook group, and that's where you're actually seeing it first now because you're special. We also have many other programs with clients all around the world, and now we're getting this sense of there's the room is a little nervous. It's a little overwhelmed. All of us feel this, right? And if you're not, hey Adriana, I see you. And even if you're not on this particular boat of, you're overwhelmed right now, you recently went through it, you might actually start seeing some of that based on, where you are. And so this level up live is almost to talk a little bit about this and share with you one strategy that could maybe help overcome some of these times or at least address some of that, right? And so for some of you, it's the end of year. You maybe took a vacation if you could, some time off, and now you're coming back. And when you're back, you find yourself like you can't do all the things you wanted to do. It's almost like there's too much, you're overwhelmed. Or maybe you're ready, but classes are studying or other things are happening, and all the great plans that you had are like, oh, now what's gonna happen with that? Some of us may be still dealing with burnout from even though we took time off, that maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe we needed something else, not just a little break or a short break or a medium-sized break. And so that may be part of this feeling that we have of overwhelm. Some of us have had, you know, are in a country where some political things have been thrown at us, and we're all questioning, okay, what's going on? How do we feel? And what are the expectations for tomorrow and later in the week? So there are many things going on, and this is for every country, because again, we have clients in every country, and actually, I work with an international organization too. So this is not just related to one particular setting or country. This is for all of us. In general, this year has been pretty brutal. I mean, and some of us agree that it has really, it has just like, it gave us a little wake up call that life isn't always the way we thought it was going to be, and it could really change and be overwhelming. And so this level up life is to somewhat give a little bit of perspective. If you know me, I talk a lot about these being positive, a positive realist in many ways, because there are things that we can change the perspective and somewhat make it a little easier on ourselves and our people around us. And so for this level up life in particular, I wanted to share 3 steps to guide us in a self-checking exercise. And this self-checking is more from the perspective of making it constructive and also productive. And so it's a combination of little things that one can do that can help us, and we can take it further. If this is your first time doing a self-check-in, this is a good way to start. This is a starting point. This is not a you do this and then you finish and then it's fixed. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these are some guides based on my experience and the clients that I work with and the people that I work with. And so the first step that I'm going to cover is reserving actual time during your day or during your week. So that we can have a little self check-in. And the main idea behind this first step is to be able to have time and ask ourselves, how am I doing? And what are the reasons why I'm doing what I'm feeling this way? If you are in momentum, we had a whole coaching call, short coaching call on this very subject. And again, it's like it's the kind of thing that you kind of like start doing, and then eventually you do it over and over, and you modify it based on your needs. And so the most important thing, even if you are not in momentum and you cannot access that recording and follow all of the prompts that I gave you, the bottom line and the main thing with this exercise is to say, how am I today? How am I feeling today, right now? And if you can write that down, that's even better because you have it there and you can read what you're thinking. And then also ask yourself, what is the main reason why I'm feeling this way? And so you can again take these questions and dig deeper. And then something to also remember is that you want to ask yourself these questions without judgment. So you're not answering these questions from the lens of how should I be doing. You're mostly without judgment figuring out how is it that you're feeling and why. What are the reasons for that those feelings? And so the second step then would be to take this to the next level and almost do it like a self inventory. You want to figure out where you stand. Who are you based on? Um, just let's just leave it at that for right now. Who are you? And then what is your power based on the answer to these questions? Um, and basically, the point behind this is that we all hold some specific kind of power within a specific setting. And we can use that power to really make a positive change, whether it's for us, whether it's for our environment, our people around us. And so sometimes we forget. Sometimes we are in this scarcity mindset that Kathy has talked about in the past, and we're like, I can't do this, I can't do that. I am powerless in this reason and in this other. But we also have power. Maybe, and actually, I have three examples that I wanted to give you because just to illustrate that part and remind each other that we have power and we have the possibility for creating this positive change. And so to go a little further in this point, when you're asking yourself what do you stand, what titles do you have, and that actually helps figuring out the power to some extent. You can run through this simple exercise of first listing the top three things that you have in your life as priorities, and so that way you can just put them on paper and map them out and just see them there. What are the three top things that matter to me? And then also perhaps start asking yourself, are you given enough time to reflect on those things, to execute those things? What's if they're priorities, how do you see them? How do you enact them? The next thing that you can do is also another little list. And this one is going to help you figure out what your power is based on who you are and what you are and all the things that you're answering. So if you list your labels, your titles, those automatically give you an idea of the kinds of power that you can have in specific settings. So you're not going to have the same power everywhere, perhaps, but you are going to, based on this one hat that I'm wearing and this title, these are the things that I can do. And yes, there are others that you cannot, and that is good to know because then you don't want to change things that you can, but there are others that you could. And so realizing and putting it simply on paper and saying, this is what the power that I have. These are the things that I could do that align with my priorities, that align with who I am, that can help how I'm feeling, that can also start moving, helping you move in the right direction. So the three examples that I wanted to give in terms of the labels and the power are very simple, but it's almost to kind of like remind ourselves, right? So for instance, maybe you are a teaching assistant at a university, you're a grad student, you're doing teaching assistant job for a semester, you hold power in the classroom. Maybe it's maybe not total power for everything and every single thing, but you are there and you are in charge of specific things, and at the same time um, you can you can have the power to help those around you and also to help your own job in that sense. And so just putting it there and figuring out what are the things that I'm powerful about through this title, that helps. The second example is maybe you're a tenure professor, and so you're in charge of a class and you can manage that class in ways that are productive, not just for you, but also your students. And particularly now, as we're in this year of transition almost. 2021 is not totally different from 2020. It's a continuation. And then the question is, what have we learned and what can we use and to make our 2021 perhaps a little smoother within the bounds of what we can do. The third example, that's actually one that's I wanted to make sure I mentioned because it's important, is that, if you find yourself being an ally, perhaps marginalized folks in your, in your an ally to your colleagues in your particular department, in your group where you're working on a collaboration, perhaps you also hold power, and you can, at the very least, you can hold space for these people, even if you're doing the same things that you need to do, want to do, that are in line with your mission, with your philosophy. Many times these are things that overlap. And so by realizing that you hold that power, that your voice carries power, has that power, then it's a little easier to go about life when you're feeling low, feeling high, and use that to balance the playing field. The third step in this self-check-in exercise is probably, well, I was gonna say the most important one, but it's also very important. They're all important. The next step is to remind and recognize each of us of the progress that we have made in all the aspects. So questions 1 and 2, or steps 1 and 2, are about the present, perhaps, and almost like analyzing that. And step 3 is almost like looking back to the past, to remind ourselves of the good things that we have been able to do in all of these spaces, steps 1 and 2, really. Um, and also the things that we perhaps want to continue doing or want to work on in the future. And so if you are able to cherish these milestones, and maybe they weren't all perfect, they weren't all great, but there is progress. And so there's specific things that you want to make sure you remind yourself and yourself check in, to use that to fuel your next steps. And so, for instance, um, if we're talking about social justice work, because that is something that, right now, lately has been getting a lot of attention. This is something that it's ongoing. This is something that isn't new. And at the same time, it's the kind of thing that needs to get that continuous work. It's an ongoing thing. And so um, we need to be intentional with our actions and our time. We need to make sure that we are recognizing. We almost need to, implement a model where we act and reflect, because if we don't reflect post the action, then we don't know. We can't really assess that, right? If you're a professor, you know how evaluations can help you in some ways, not in others. So you still have to reflect those actions that you enacted. Then you have to get some feedback, you have to implement some of these changes and feedback and reflections that you had, and then action again. And so this model that I just mentioned is something that applies, of course, to social justice, and also to many other things, particularly the ones that I talked about in steps 1 and 2. And so it's almost like it all ties together. We have to make sure that we don't go down the rabbit hole. It's easy because, again, the last year was brutal, and so it's easy to feel like, oh, can't do, it's been too bad. There are some things that are riskable, and in a way, um, we it's not that we were lucky that we had 2020, but we certainly have learned a lot from it, and we can rescue many things and use it to really help us propel 2021 within the constraints that we can, and make it a year that we want to be happy about, or at least be, somewhat at peace with, within the bounds that we can get. So again, the model that I just mentioned in step number 3 applies to anything in life, and I'm just going to repeat it here. Act and reflect, get feedback, implement, and take action again. And again, it's really, it all boils down to celebrating, reflecting and celebrating all of these milestones that we've had along the way, being flexible, because that's something that will help us improve what we have done and how we feel about things, and also being vulnerable and humble, because it's going to come down to that. What do we need to change, and how? And so, again, just to recap, and before I leave you, I cover 3 steps to guide our self check-in, and also a constructive and productive way. The first one is to check in and figure out who I and how I am, and why I'm feeling that way. Second is almost like an inventory to figure out where you stand and the kind of power that you hold, because we all have power that we can use for good, and more than just ourselves. And then third, and this is not to give you extra work, this is just, that's the way it is, and you have to realize that. And third, we can remind and recognize ourselves in the progress that we have made, and recommit to what matters. Again, particularly in the matters of social justice, we want to make sure that we are recommitting to these important things that we see in life that we want to happen, and then we can more effectively address our action in the future. So again, this year has been an extension, is an extension basically of 2020, but also we have learned a lot. We can cherish what we have learned. We can mourn some of the losses and use this energy to say, how are we going to make 2021 a little better within the constraints that we can. So thank you so much for listening. I will leave you now, and I hope you have a wonderful or a peaceful end of the month. And we will see you next time I'm on live. See you later. Bye.